90 to 92. The Gerry Ryan Show, Monday to Friday, 9 till 12 on 2FM.
I have an email here from Rosanna. It starts off, Gerry, I spoke to you before on the programme. Remember me, I'm the Simpsons artist. She works on the animation side of the Simpsons, originally from Kilkenny. Recently transplanted from LA to the Bay Area, now working from home on the show. Rosanna, good morning.
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much indeed for your email. How are you?
Oh, I'm very, very well. I'm just sitting here looking at some shoes online.
Now, you have sent us not just good tidings for the time of year that's in it, and felicitations and good tidings to you too, back and to everybody in San Francisco, but you have also sent us a selection of photographs of very exotic and indeed very high-heeled shoes.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely obsessed, basically.
Yeah, and we've been talking about shoes over the past while.
I've been listening, yeah. So I thought I really had to write in and send you some pictures too. So basically, for me, it's about quality as opposed to quantity. I don't have that many pairs, maybe 20, but they're all really unique and really special, I think.
I really like these, I don't know what, they've got very, very high, almost platform height heels. Now, they're also spiked high on 5-inch stilettos. Yeah. And they've got crocodile tongs and crocodile heels. Wow.
Yeah, not bad, eh?
They're pretty impressive, they are.
Some of those shoes there, too, have metal heels. So they're actually, like, metal. That's the only way because the heel is so thin to keep you up there, you know? It's got to be...
Well, that was the original stiletto, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so, actually. You're probably right, yeah.
Now, look at the boot. The boot, these thigh-high sort of sexy boots, and that has a metal heel.
Yeah.
Which looks like you could actually kill somebody. They're your favourite.
Yeah, I thought about getting those for probably about 2 months. And I was like, oh, they're too much money, but
How much were they?
Oh, they were over $500. Now my whole family knows.
They were over $500. That's quite expensive, isn't it?
It is a little bit.
I mean, it's not the most expensive pair of shoes you could buy, but it is expensive.
Yeah.
And are they a brand that I would recognise?
No, they're kind of made, a lot of them are made in Italy by this store in LA. You probably heard of Melrose. It's kind of a trendy street in LA, yeah. And it's called XTC. They have a website, and they kind of design and make a lot of their own shoes. So, yeah, I don't own any Manolos or any of those fancy ones.
And I detect in your voice that you're not that interested in owning Manolos.
They'd have to really...
maybe if somebody gave me a pair, I wouldn't say no.
Oh, yeah, if you just said, here you go, I'd take them, but...
Now, also, can I refer to your email, because there's some private obsessions revealed in this email. In my life, there is nothing that makes me happier than a beautiful shoe or boot. I also, after having acquired a new pair, our thigh-high rust leather stilettos, our patent platforms, keep them by my bed, so they are the first thing I see in the morning. Ooh.
Yeah, I make my boyfriend very jealous.
So you've got the thigh-high boots, or the patent leathers, or the court shoes, or whatever it is. I think though it's mostly high heels for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And you keep your current favourites, by the bed, so that when you wake up in the morning, your hair tousled. A faint aroma of sex from the night before, still in the air. Romance in the bedroom. But you're looking at the shoes.
It's the shoes. It's all about the shoes. That's basically why I have my Simpsons job. It's just for the shoes, really. But, you know, I can't complain.
Now that you mentioned it, The Simpsons. I read Simpsons. I read this morning with the mixture of fear and delight that The Simpsons were going to have a special St. Patrick's Day episode set entirely in Ireland. Now, one presumes they will completely take the piss out of the Irish, as they should.
Oh, they do, believe me.
Yeah, you've worked on it.
Yeah, I have, yeah. I was working on it till very recently.
Yeah.
It's kind of a rush job. And I was up till like 2 a.m. I was working weekends I was home in Ireland for Christmas. As soon as I got back, there were scenes by the door, FedEx packages waiting for me to hop on the scenes and just get to them right away because they wanted it ready for St. Patrick's Day. And I believe it's actually showing in Ireland before the US.
Yes, it's going to show in Ireland before the US. It's showing on St. Patrick's Day in Ireland.
It would be really exciting. I wish I could be there, but I don't think they're going to send me.
Can you give us a kind of sneak verbal preview?
I'm not really supposed to.
Well, what's the kind of we know that there are issues as usual regarding alcohol and the pub and O'Flanagan's
and there's no smoking ban. They forget about that.
They don't understand the no smoking ban.
They
No,
don't care about that. No.
No.
So basically, there's lots of I'm an effects artist, so there's lots of great effects. Lots of smoke, lots of I'll just give you a hint. Lots of bubbles and. Lots of booze, and I think you're going to really enjoy
lots
it.
of bubbles, booze and smoke. So that's Ireland, is it?
That is, yeah, I know. I was actually, because I have to look at the show on a reel.
Well, do you know the Irish are very sensitive? You know how sensitive we are?
Oh.
Will we get offended by it?
I have to say I was slightly offended, but they do make fun of everybody.
Oh, by God, they do. Should they make fun of themselves? My favourite episode is when they take the piss out of the Korean animators.
Absolutely, they do that a lot. It's terrible, but they make fun of themselves too, like you say. And it's the spirit of it. So no one's left out ever.
Rosanna, we now know that the current crop of The Simpsons, of course, is being it's shot and processed and broadcast in some areas in high definition. Has that made any difference to the way that you work on the programme?
Yeah, we work on different size paper now. It's wider, and also there's a lot more detail in what we're doing. It's one of the reasons why they brought on effects artists. The last time I spoke to you, I was the only one, because they were starting the new process. Now there are 3 of us, and it's one of the reasons why they're making the effects more high quality. The character animation is better quality, and even the background.
And do you think it improves it? Well, obviously you're the effects artist. You would say it does. Do you think it actually does? Yeah.
I really do, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I think, especially to my eye, if I see, bad or weak effects, I'm like cringing, But I think even people who don't really know the ins and outs of it, they look at it now and say, wow, it looks really different. And if you go back and look at one from 5-10 years ago, you'd be like, wow.
Well, I mean, and some people I heard with great innocence, a person who should actually know better because he works in television, was looking at one of the older episodes and he said to me, oh, look, it's faded. And I said, no, it hasn't faded. That's exactly the way it looked 10 years ago.
Isn't it incredible
it's just the way the process now is so much more. The grab, all the data is a much greater grab of it now, and there's a much larger proportion of the images actually being recorded and transmitted. I wonder though about, because they do transmit the old stuff in high definition as well, and that's probably not such a good idea.
No, because then you're going to see all the little problems, aren't you? So, yeah.
Now, I presume, and you'd be well placed to answer this one, it seems to be there forever. It's not going away anywhere.
No, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. You know the way everything's going in the world right now, but yeah.
Don't let them take the Simpsons away from us.
No.
And what would you do? No more shoes, no more heels.
No. They can't do that to me. No, I think we're good for another while yet.
Mm-hmm.
The actors are on board for another decent length of time, and I mean everybody loves the show worldwide, so I just can't see it going in.
Well, as you know, here in Europe it's on constant rotation on Sky Television. Constant rotation. There is not a moment in the day that you can't see an episode of The Simpsons.
I know. I was home not this Christmas, but the Christmas before, and I went to Paris for a few days and got to see it in French. It was so strange, But
what's it like in French?
All the voices are weird and different. Bart's like bonjour, and it's just really strange.
Of course, the French. I'm surprised they even allow it in. It's contaminating our culture,
I know, but the funny thing is, as I lived over there, they really love American culture in general. They love their Coca-Cola.
Oh no, the French people probably like American culture, but the style and the culture and the fashion police. Don't forget, this is the country where they tried to ban the official language of the internet, which of course is English. They tried to ban it. They tried to come up with technology that would only allow French language materialise on your screen if you were surfing the internet.
So crazy.
Them frogs, as you American chaps would say. Now, it's been lovely speaking to you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to talk to you again.
And thank you. I'll pass around. I mean, this stuff has been looked at like porn in the office here, these shoes. Everybody very impressed indeed. And lovely to hear your voice again, Rosanna. Good morning.
Great to talk to you, Gerry.
God bless and bye-bye.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Bye.
Now, that's Rosanna, and she's one of the effects animators on The Simpsons, which is now broadcast in high definition. Did you notice? Maybe not.
2FM. Afternoons on 2FM, kicking off at midday with Nikki Hayes and her all-request lunch. That's 120 minutes of your music. You choose, we obey, and play. Be in with a chance of winning the biggest prizes on radio. Then at 2 p.m., Ricochet perks up your day with a box full of afternoon delights. Interviews from the biggest stars and bizarre topics to keep your brain in motion. Afternoons on 2FM. You work, we play.
Now, Anne, good morning. Or Anya, my apologies. Good morning to you.
Hi, Gerry. How are you?
I'm good. I don't know what we're going to do for this family who are being put off by this woman and her loud orgasms. However, that's not what you're on about.
No, I'm not. Basically, I'm heading to Egypt in March for 2 weeks with my boyfriend. And just basically, I wanted to see, does any of your listeners have any tips on, places to go, things to see. We're going to Sharm El Sheikh, which is about...
Sharm El Sheikh. My eldest daughter has been there, I think, twice.
Oh, cool, okay.
And in fact was there last... Now, she absolutely loved it, okay?
Yeah.
I'll give you the pros and the cons of it, because I've spoken with her about it. She said, first of all, the place is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Right? Everything was on site. Now, the one downside of it that I sort of read between the lines was that they didn't get out to see much of Egypt. Okay? Now, and the security was fantastic as well, because I know that she was a little bit concerned, as was her boyfriend, about, know that there have been a number of bombings in Egypt. There's a fundamentalist group, as there is in almost every Arab country, and there's a predominantly Arab population.
Yeah.
There are Christians in Egypt, but it's a predominantly Arab population. Almost every country in North Africa, or indeed the Middle East, has had a problem. I mean, we've had bombings here in this country. That's what I always say to people when they start worrying about something like this. Don't forget, for over a quarter of a century, we were basically one continual conflagration in this country. Don't forget, 100 miles away from where I'm sitting, and sometimes only 100 feet away from where I'm sitting, bombs were going off in this country. And most of us, with due consideration for those who did suffer injury and lose their lives, most of us survived. So bear that in mind. That's the first thing to think of.
Yeah.
You live in a country that had a very substantial revolutionary movement, who were at war with one of the biggest armies in the world, the British Army, and that was going on as you lived here, right? So bear that in mind. Secondly, tourism is God in Egypt. They will do anything to protect the tourist, right? Anything. So you will be well protected in Sharm El Sheikh. Now, it's very hot. When are you going?
Yeah, we're going the 25th of March.
Okay, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So it won't be too warm, because I know...
I like to heat myself.
When Lottie went in the summer, she said it was said it was so hot on some days that they couldn't actually leave the room.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't want that. Now, the place was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful swimming pools, absolutely gorgeous food. There isn't an alcohol ban or anything like that. They found it very easy to survive on a pretty slim budget, and that's the kind of budget that she'd be on. She's a student.
Do you bring did she bring cash, or what way? That's kind of what we wanted to
cash
see.
And credit cards.
Credit card, yeah.
Now, when you're in the, I presume that you're going to be staying. It's the compound you're going to be staying.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Now, it's basically signing. So you're going to be signing most stuff, so it'll be on your bill.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure. I presume you could pay for it with cash if you wanted to.
Yeah, will I have credit card access?
Yeah, now, and I wouldn't be bothered really going off and getting Egyptian pounds or anything like that.
Really?
If you bring euros or dollars, which I'm sure that they'll take them.
Okay. And just as for flights to Cairo and stuff like that, did she fly to Cairo and kind of what?
Yes, there was now she went through whatever the European end or the other international end of American Holidays is. I can't remember the name of the company.
Okay.
But they organised it. It was one of their sister companies, and there was a direct flight. Now, it was at a reasonably inconvenient time, if I recall, but it was cheap. It was very cheap.
Yeah.
It was a charter flight from Dublin.
Okay.
Okay, so you got a direct flight. You can do that. You haven't booked any of this yet, have you?
Oh, yeah, I haven't booked. Okay. I haven't booked a while now. See,
do you not know what your flight is?
Yeah, we are. We're flying to... No, I just mean we're only going to Sharm el-Sheikh, but we want to go see the pyramids. I think you can do day
Oh, you can do day trips. Of course you can. You could do day trips, and you can also take a day or two. I mean, there's a lovely trip to be had on one of the sailing barges on the Nile. I could really recommend that. That's absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful old world style and luxury for next to nothing. I mean, really, genuinely, very, very cheap. You wouldn't go down the Shannon for the money that you'd spend on this 5-star luxury. I'm not joking now, really. So that's a fantastic option. And also you've got a direct day trip I think you can make down to, maybe one overnight might be involved in going down to see the pyramids. The funny thing about the pyramids now, Anya, is that you have this image in your head probably of the pyramids being out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
They're not.
Really?
They're basically sort of, if you're a Dublin person, they're kind of in Clontarf, basically.
Oh, really?
You know? But it is spectacular. It's absolutely I prefer to see Luxor and Thebes. They're ancient cities, right? And you could incorporate that into your trip on the Nile.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going for 2 weeks, so I mean...
Yeah, why don't you take a few days off and go down the Nile then?
Yeah, that sounds good. And where would you book that? Or
Well, you could book that from here.
Yeah.
Your travel agent should be able to do that for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, make sure that if you're going to get one of the sailing barges, that make sure it's one of the 5-star ones, that it's got the air-conditioned rooms. Do you know what's fantastic? You know, sipping a drink, right, as the sun goes down and you see the feluccas, you know, the red-sailed sailing boats that they have on the Nile, watching the sun going down across the desert, sipping your G&T, right? And you know, the evening breeze is blowing across the river. And you're dressed and getting ready for dinner. For less money than you'd hire a boat to go down the Shannon, right?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And the beautiful accommodation, really beautiful. And these yokes are sumptuous, you know, they're absolutely gorgeous. So I would really heartily recommend that. Now, in terms of Sharm el-Sheikh, there's one little tip I'll give you. You'd consider yourself a liberated woman, wouldn't you? Yes, a woman of her time?
No, well, I'm only 24.
No, but you're not. You know, you're not a simpering little housewife type who's going to kowtow and do everything that her boyfriend tells her. No. Okay. Now, so therefore, you're going to get a slight little shock in Sharm el-Sheikh, where you will find that a lot of the staff defer to him. Right? Okay. Lottie said one of the things that drove her mad was they'd come up to the bedroom with the breakfast, maybe for, you know, breakfast in bed, whatever, and the guy would come over and he would address the boyfriend. Wouldn't speak to her.
Okay.
When they were at the pool getting drinks, addressed the boyfriend, wouldn't speak to her. Now, there's a bit of that, okay?
Right, okay.
So don't get up on your high horse about it. You're not going to change somebody else's culture.
Exactly,
Just accept it, and that's the way it is. But you'll have a tremendous holiday. The Egyptian people are incredibly friendly. They're very welcoming. They cherish and nurture their tourist industry. And, of course, at the heart of the tourist industry are people like you, so that you'll have a great time. Now, I would try and pre-book the trip on the Nile if I was you.
Yeah, okay.
But don't go away and not do that. That's a great trip. It's a brilliant trip. It's wonderful. And, in fact, I would definitely do that in preference to going on a day trip off somewhere. I think take 2 or 3 days on the Nile, and just you to bring away enough clothes just to cover. And they stop off at points of interest as they make the trip. Yes, you'll love it. You'll absolutely love it.
Oh, I'm excited now.
Now, I know you're probably worried because of the recent bombing, and there was a bomb went off on Sunday.
In Cairo,
Yeah, but honestly, I'll say it again. We lived for over a quarter of a century with really horrific bombings and killings and murderings and shootings in this country. That's the first thing you have to think. And most of us survived it, all right?
Yeah, that's true.
And, you know, remember how angry, you know, your mum and dad used to get when somebody would say, "Oh, where do you come from?" And you'd say, "Well, we come from Ireland." "Oh, yeah, where the war is on." "Oh, my God, in Belfast." And remember, we used to get so upset about that. And no, come over, you'll see, this isn't all that bad. You'll be absolutely fine, okay?
Thanks so much.
Now, here's a texter saying to you, tell her she'll have a great holiday. It was the best holiday I ever had in Egypt. Okay?
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Okay.
Good luck to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gerry.
Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, it is. It's a tremendous place and really welcoming people. And it's literally, and I don't say this with disrespect to the product, it's dirt cheap.
2FM. Hello?
Hello.
It's Mr. Gaffier's
Gaffier's
aunt from Ireland. Yes.
Apologies, Mum. You will not believe what your nephew has done. I found him stopping the delivery to Kenco. He didn't understand they use the same high-quality Arabica beans in their instant coffee as in their roast and ground to ensure a fantastic taste. If only your nephew shared your knowledge, Mum. And your timing.
Kenco. Coffee without compromise.
TV licence, Inspector.
This is our holiday home.
Still, you need a separate licence for the TV here.
We don't have a TV. We're very outdoorsy, hill walking, canoeing, sky gliding, surfboarding.
Wow, sounds great.
Oh yeah, good to get away, you know yourself.
And if it rains?
We pretty much stay in and watch TV.
Damn.
TV licence inspectors visit 18,000 homes, holiday homes and businesses every month. We've heard all the excuses and none of them work. Now you can pay online at tvlicence.ie, at the post office or local 1890 228 528.
Andrew says he's related to Shakespeare. Well, we discovered that Che Guevara was in fact from the west of Ireland yesterday. In fact, comes from somewhere around the Oranmore area, and we tracked down a couple of his relatives. So, Barack Obama may have awfully. Che Guevara has Oranmore. Let's see where William Shakespeare actually comes from. Andrew, good morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
How are you?
Not too bad.
What's your second name, Andrew?
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
An unusual name.
Yeah. Get a bit of grief for it, all right?
Yes, I would imagine so. In fact, I've never met anybody called Shakespeare.
Yeah, apparently there's quite a few in Dublin. I've never met any myself, but I'm originally from England. Living in Ireland now about 10 and a half years, something like that.
Whereabouts do you hail from in England?
Lancashire, northwest.
Lancashire.
I have a big family now over there, all named Shakespeare, from Yorkshire, that area.
And would it be an unusual name in Yorkshire, would it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Like I say, apparently there's a lot in Dublin. I've never met anybody else other than my family that has the name, but...
Well, I was about to say, obviously everybody's heard of Will, the boy from Stratford that did well. But that's about it, right? And Shakespeare's sister, the band, which I don't think has anything to do with anybody named Shakespeare. So you are literally the only person that I've ever met with William Shakespeare's surname.
Oh, there you go.
Now, you seem to believe, and why wouldn't you, that you're related to William Shakespeare in some way or some shape or another.
Yeah.
Have you done any homework, or is this just wishful thinking?
No, it's not. I've not done much research on it. It's my uncle. He's from Canada. Well, he's living in Canada now. He's originally from the south of England, somewhere like that. He's very into that kind of thing. He tried to see where we're related to him. Apparently, no one is related directly. Well, no one with the last name Shakespeare is related directly through him. He had, I think, 3 girls and a son, but the son died when he was 14, so he couldn't pass on the name. But Shakespeare had 2 brothers, Edmund and Richard. So apparently we're related through them. The uncle traced back as far as he could, and he got stuck at a certain point. So he traced forward from one of Shakespeare's brothers, and we're related that way, I think. So,
well, you stand a much better chance of making the connection in the UK because they've very good village, parish and church records, which we don't really have. We did until we burnt down a lot of them in this country, but certainly in the UK you can go right back nearly to the Magna Carta. He should have been able to do a reasonably good search.
Yeah, well, he was fairly sure about it, and he's well up on all this kind of thing. He's a scientist and all that, so I'm taking his word here. So if I'm proved wrong, I can go back to him.
And can I ever ask you, have you ever seen any of your ancient relatives' work?
Yeah, I mean, I did it in school, and I didn't have much of a gift for it, all right, but I've Romeo and Juliet. And
what would be your favourite?
I'd like Macbeth now.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Pretty good, you know.
Dark.
Yeah.
Out, damned spot, out.
I can't make head or tail of much of it myself, all the language and the use.
Sure, we don't understand our relatives at the best of times, do we?
No,
don't worry about that.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, that's a good one. You certainly go on the list with that. Gary, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
Very good. Welcome. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks very much, and I'm afraid I can't claim to be related to anybody famous. I feel a little bit left out now at this stage.
Well, don't would be my advice. Don't. Now, you were listening yesterday to the programme. What part of it caught your attention in particular?
I sent a text in about the story that you told there about BT putting a load of people on suspension there for.
This is the Irish joke where we had 3 Irishmen. One of them went budgie jumping with a budgie in his hand because he thought it was bungee jumping.
We had the famous parrot shooter, and then the best of all, the hen glider. Of course.
The hen glider who jumped off a cliff holding a chicken.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, that it's kind of political correctness gone absolutely bananas.
Yeah, and BT have threatened to sack all of these fellas, but even the Irish Society or Association of Leicester said, listen, this is political correctness gone bananas.
Absolutely, yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, if BT were to undertake an exercise and go into everybody's email accounts and see all the funny jokes that they've stored, I'm pretty sure they'd uncover jokes, as most of us do, in all fairness, about people from every nationality under the planet. I've heard some cracking Irish jokes, heard some very, very funny English jokes, none of which I can remember, strangely enough, at the moment. But like that now, if I was to be offended every time I heard an English person telling a joke about an Irish person, or vice versa...
You'd never get up.
I'd have thought you'd be after jumping off a cliff now at this stage.
You may be interested to hear the words of John Midgley of the Campaign Against Political Correctness then. He said, I sincerely hope that common sense is brought to bear on this and that political correctness does not cost these people their jobs, especially in the present economic climate.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't possibly agree more. It really is. It's gotten to a stage now in society where almost anything that you do or say or even wear in some instances will cause some sort of...
Well, it's like some of the schools, particularly in the Greater London area, where, they weren't allowed to have Christmas cards in the children's classrooms or say Happy Christmas. You had to say Happy Everybody's Feast.
That's right, yeah.
In case you'd offend, any of the majorities or the minorities.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It's gotten to a stage now where I think we're going to have to do...
And Gary, are you absolutely sure you're not related to General George Patton or Cuchulainn,
I don't know.
Eamon de Valera, anybody?
I was going to throw in something there, but there's no point. I mean, I'd be found out fairly quick and I'd look like I had egg on my face.
Not in this country. It's very hard to trace your ancestry in Ireland because, as you know, just before the Free State emerged, we basically burnt down all the records, or at least the places where they were housed. So it's very hard to actually go back in time. So I think basically you could give it a good go, and very few people would be able to dispute it.
Well, this is true as well. There's a decent amount of monks around about the north of Dublin, kind of Rush and Skerries and North County.
Monk, is that your second name?
No, Monks, M-O-N-K-S.
M-O-N-K-S.
I got the name off my parents for my birthday one year. Very happy about it.
All right, I'm going to throw this out right for you. Are you ready? Let's just take the S off and say that it's something that was just attached to your name recently. And let's say that in fact your name is of German origin, Monka, and you are related to the man who was the last defender of Berlin during the Second World War, General Monka.
Well, happy days.
Happy days. It's interesting, isn't it? Good morning.
I'm glad somebody from my lineage stood on the wall and protected people.
Yes, good morning. Helen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Gerry. How are you?
Now, Helen, good morning and welcome, an English listener.
An English listener is right.
Now, you have an Irishman joke for us.
Oh, you want me to tell it, do you?
Absolutely.
You'll need to do the Irish bit for me because I can't say that bit, Gerry, at all.
Why?
Because I can't speak Irish.
Oh, it's actually in Gaelic, is it?
Some of it is, yeah.
Hold on a second, I'll have a look. Somebody's just handed it to me. A paddy walking... Okay, go on. Well, you start it off and I'll finish it.
A paddy walking through a field sees a man drinking water from a pool with his hand. The paddy shouts,
Na ol an tishke, tá slán the shock bow.
Don't drink the water, it's full of cow shit.
That's
the
what
man
that means.
shouts back, I'm English, speak English, I don't understand you. And the paddy shouts back, use both hands, you'll get more in. I wasn't offended by it, Paddy. Gerry, I thought it was quite funny.
It is funny, yeah.
It is funny, and it was sent to me by an Irishman.
Yeah, it's good.
It is. It is indeed.
All right, okay, good morning.
See ya.
Well done, Helen.
Bye-bye.
By the way, Helen.
Yeah?
Are you there? Are you related to anybody famous?
I don't know, I'm a Murphy originally.
Murphy.
Yeah.
Father Murphy from Old Kilcormac. That's
Maybe.
Father Murphy from Old Kilcormac stirred up the crowd with his... I can't even remember the lyrics.
You have a good singing voice, Gerry.
I've got a pub singing voice. Yeah. Good morning.
Bye.
Father Murphy from Old Kilcormac. That was the Pike Rebellion, wasn't it? Isn't that what that song's about? Therese, stop hiding behind the monitor.
2FM.
I'm joined now in studio by one of the most successful, one of the most innovative, he wrote this himself, one of the most successful, one of the most innovative musicians of the last 30 years. Throughout the 80s... why am I slurring? It's near the end of the show, I suppose. Throughout the early 1980s, he and his band Ultravox, who you were just listening to there, remixed in full orthophonic tiny sound on the thing that we played here, combined massive popular chart success with credibility, influence and respect. On the 25th of November 1984, he spearheaded one of pop music's most historic events. This makes it sound like Braveheart. When 36 artists collectively known as Band Aid recorded Do They Know It's Christmas, a song that he had written with Bob Geldof and still believes that he should have got money from. The single sold over 3 million copies in the UK and led to Live Aid, the 1985 concert, which featured the world's greatest music acts and raised millions for charity. Actually, I was just recently, Midge Ure, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
I was wading through literally the box set of the concert itself, and what a great story there is, because, you know, obviously, I don't know whether you were involved in the kind of moral decisions that were made about destroying the tapes and making sure that nobody could actually create a box set. Yeah. That was the idea. I presume that was Bob came up with that idea.
I think it's nonsense, but carry on.
And, you know, whoever did the work on retrieving the sound did a bloody good job.
I went to see it in the cinema when it came out.
Yeah.
They took what was left of the artists, the ones that were still alive, barely, and shoved us in the cinema in London, and we watched this thing. And once you get past the very dodgy haircuts that were up there, the sound quality was actually incredibly good. You know, so you know, it was just fantastic. I don't know who did it. I don't know how they managed to do it. I think the nonsense about cutting up tapes and all of that stuff is nonsense. You
don't think that's true?
I don't think that happened at all. What happened at the time was. You imagine you want the Stones to come and appear on something, like, you know, the Who or whatever. You don't just phone up one manager. You got to phone up 4 managers or 5 managers. You know, and I won't do it unless, you know, Keith's doing it, and I won't do it unless Mick's doing it. You know, all of that stuff. So the logistics in getting the artists just to commit to doing Live Aid was hard enough. Thrown into the mix, the idea that I've got to sign, rights away, and, you know, video rights, and, you know, a TV all of that stuff was just a nightmare. So we didn't do it. The idea was it was a one-off concert. It was never meant to be seen again. That was it. There was going to be no DVDs, or they weren't invented then, but no, you know, VHSs, no DVDs, no ongoing thing, no remixes, nothing. So it was a logistical problem rather than saying, well, that's it. You know, we're going to keep this to ourselves, and nobody's ever going to get it.
There'll always be an engineer.
Within the first hour of the programme going out, there were already sets of bootlegs, and, you know, all over the world. You know, you could buy the thing. You know, people had you know, recorded it on their VHSs and copied them and sold them.
Well, I would have been amazingly surprised if there wasn't a young fella in the BBC who, in anticipation of it, sat down, got a bloody good system together and made sure that every single note was recorded. And I presume that's exactly what happened.
I can imagine it probably was.
Yeah. Now, when you look back, it gives me the heebies. 1984. That wasn't yesterday.
No, it wasn't. I know, it was a long, long time ago. Long time ago. But, you know, we're still there doing it. It's funny. 84 was, you know...
Well, let's just remind ourselves, and this is for the younger people listening, we were slap bang in the middle of a major recession.
Yeah.
Slap bang in the middle of a major recession. I'm not sure whether Thatcher was still on the throne, was she?
She was.
Yeah, she was. So it wasn't a great world at the time. Mixed in with that, of course, the famine that sparked off the whole thing. And, you know... It was an amazing achievement to get people as enthusiastic as they eventually became, to bring them to the point where they got that gig together.
Well, you think about it. You use the tools that work, and the tools that work to touch people's emotions. Music. You know, you use music as the platform because, you know, and it's all very cliched, but it's true. You know, it transcends, you know, barriers and, you know, countries and languages, and, you know, you feel the emotion in a piece of music. It doesn't matter where it's from. You can tell what it's about, whether it's happy or sad or whatever. So we use that platform. We use celebrity, which is pretty tacky, but, you know, it's
powerful currency.
Absolutely, it's very powerful currency. So you put those elements together and you give people a medium they understand. On top of that, you give them those images that we all saw on television. And it doesn't matter whether you're struggling to keep the roof over your head or whatever, we were all disgusted with the same thing, all across the board, all across the Western world. We looked at those images on our television and were just horrified by what we were seeing, So you mix all that together, stick in a bit of celebrity, stick in a bit of media hype and, the frenzy that getting a bunch of celebs together causes, and keep everybody out. The only people allowed in the studio that day were the artists. No photographers besides the official photographer we allowed in, no major, tabloid newspapers, no journalists, none of that stuff. It was closed doors, and then you've got a bartering system. While I was mixing the record, 24 hours we had to record all the vocals, do Phil Collins' drums. I'd spent 4 days, I played all the instruments on the record. I've spent 4 days in my studio getting all the backing track together. So halfway through mixing this record, within that 24 hours, we threw everyone out the studio. Bob's on the phone, screaming at Robert Maxwell, telling him to, where to go, because he wanted to take part of the money that they were going to use for the poster, because that big photograph in the middle pages of all the artists all queued up with their headphones on, he wanted to take a part of it for their, particular, charity and stuff. And he's screaming down the phone, telling him what to go. I thought, this is ludicrous. All of a sudden, we were in a position of power. We were bartering. We were saying, no, this is money that's coming into Band-Aid Trust going directly to Africa. No middleman, no nothing. So all of that stuff in there, and even with a recession on, even with Thatcher in power, we still managed to get the VAT back. We had the people on our side. That record wasn't made by Bob and I and a bunch of pop stars. That record happened because people put their hand in their pockets, pulled out £1, and got a bit of plastic in return. Just like when you're walking down the street and you put money in a box and somebody puts a flag in your pocket. Could it ever happen again? Could it? It could happen again, and I'm just really sad that it hasn't. And I was particularly sad that 20 years down the line after Live Aid, we did Live 8. Bigger, brasher,
better
all
sound,
around the world,
whatever.
better sound, but better concert, not sure, but it was sad that we kind of had to do it, and it was even more sad that the same people were doing it again, the same big names with the same big names. It was the Madonnas and the McCartneys and the, whoever. It was the same guys. The new guys had just started to come on board, but weren't kind of given it the same whammy that we were giving it 20 years down the line. And Bob and I are getting a bit long in the tooth for this lot now,
And I think at this stage he's even willing to agree with that. Now, when you look at what you had been doing with Ultravox, and this was a serious project, this was art at the time. I remember the Monument Tour and watching that, the VHS of that, which is still a pretty good concert to look at. It's really,
it was all
really
right, wasn't it?
It was good. Big stage show, really good, very sort of little, it was pre-Zooropa, and yet there was a good nod in the direction of Nuremberg, and it worked it worked very well. And then along comes this song, Do They Know It's Christmas, who wrote the song?
Bob wrote most of the lyrics. He came to my studio. I had a studio in the bottom of my garden, like you do, because you're a rock star. And he came to my thing, but this song that the Boomtown Rats had turned down, it didn't bode well really. And he started singing this thing to me, and it was dreadful. And the next time he sang it, it was different, and it was a different tune, and it was different lyrics. And he was obviously just kind of jotting it down and making it up as he kind of went along. And I recorded his bit, and I played him what I had done, and I had done this which is a very kind of me kind of thing. And we were left with these totally incompatible ideas, and I just said, well, leave it with me. He got on the phone and phoned all the artists, and I spent 4 days in the studio trying to glue these bits together. So it's far from the best song in the world. It was at best okay. It's a song without a chorus. You know how a song structure works, verse, chorus, middle section, and lots of choruses at the end. There's no chorus in that at all. The last thing we actually did to it was stick on the Feed the World bit at the end. That's the only hook that there is. So as a song and a structure and a piece of music, it's not great. As a record and what it achieved, it's phenomenal. It's just ludicrous that it achieved what it did. But you've got to put the entire package into that. It's not the production, it's not the lyrics, it's not the melody, it's not the whatever. It's the artists, it's the times, it's the compassion and the feeling that was going round that was genuine, as you said. There was something in the air there that people really wanted to do something about that. Put all that together, and then you've got a phenomenon. Then you've got something that's in the history books.
Actually, speaking of history books, here's something we found. Can you remember?
I can remember that, exactly.
You demoing.
That's me with the very basic backing track before Phil Collins is on there, and that's me singing the melody just to give an indication to all the artists, what the thing went like. The thing is, people forget, and I forgot completely, that not only did those artists turn up on the day to come and lend it with, they'd never heard the song. They'd no idea how it went. They'd no idea what the song was all about. Maybe they had heard it, they wouldn't have come. But they were there. They walked in cold with a camera in their face, and they had to listen to that or me singing it in their ear just to get the melody. And then they had to sing it instantly and then get out and let someone else come up and take the mic. So it was an incredibly intense period for them to kind of try and do it in a very short space of time.
And of course, Paul Hewson manages to get probably one of the best, if not the best, line.
It wasn't the best line. He had a problem with it, I have to say.
But he owns it though at the end.
Oh, he grabbed it and he took it. I was standing next to him when he did it. Because I was singing again. He was there and he's got his headphones on, and he said, "How's it go?" And I said, "Well, and I sang it, in a very different way."
What way did you sing it?
It was down. I can't remember.
More gentle, I would say, was it?
Yeah. Thank God tonight it's them instead of you, or something. It was much more a throwaway line, and of course he just kind of, it was a one take. He just kind of. You see him kind of building up to it, and then he kind of threw himself at the mic, and this huge voice came out of this little guy. I'd never heard him sing live before. It was just fantastic. But he grabbed that line to the extent that when we did Band Aid 20, we couldn't let anybody else sing that line. It was his line. But he had a problem with the message. He was saying to Bob, he said, "I can't sing. Thank God. Tonight's them instead of you, or it's you instead of me," or whatever the line was. He had a real problem with it. And Bob explained, said, no, not rather them than me. Thank God it's them, it's going through it, and thank God I'm here to try and do something about it. So it was,
quick thinking, Bob.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, Bono, that's quickly. Not what it means. Yeah, he certainly does own it, and it's that. I can remember he had the awful hairstyle that I had at the time as well, the mullet, which I think nearly everybody in the room had.
Not me.
No, you didn't have.
I had
mullet.
a little ponytail.
Yeah,
I was a designer. I had a designer mullet.
You and Francis Rossi had ponytails. Yeah, Rossi, of course. The boldest boy in the class, and he's caught out when this camera sneaks round the back of the chorus.
That's right.
And he's like the fella at the back of the class smoking a fag.
The naughty schoolboy. That's exactly what he was. He was eyeing up the girls.
Yeah, because he literally was, because he was standing behind them, behind their arses. I think he was right behind Bananarama, probably looking up their skirts if they wore them. But really, I suppose what this is all apropos. You spend so much time putting together the Ultravox project. The Ultravox is, I presume now you still consider it, was a project. It was a big thing. There was a lot of stuff around it. There was visual, there was message, there was performance, there was recording, there was songwriting. And you were trying to bring something different to the way that contemporary pop songs were actually structured and the way they were recorded. And then along comes this flippin' Do They Know It's Christmas? And it's not the one that you're going to get your pension from. Mm-hmm. What do you have mixed feelings about that?
No. The weird thing that I didn't see coming was that because of Band Aid and Live Aid and my association with it and the amount of time that it took me away from the band, it killed the band. It was the thing that stopped us from working together. And when I finally got back with Ultravox, they were kind of very patiently waiting for me to come back in and get on with things. We'd moved away in completely different directions. Like any relationship, you walk away from your wife for 2 years or whatever it happens to be, and then go back and try and pick up where you left off. It doesn't work. There's things happen. You change. And when we did the final album together, it was just rubbish. We were splintered. We were all over the place. I'd written a song called All Fall Down, which I wanted to do with the Chieftains. That's where my head was. I'd moved into this area.
Well, I'd love to have been there when you suggested that to the rest of the band.
It was the best track in the album. It was great. It was fantastic. But we were a splintered band at that point. So there was mixed feelings there about the whole thing. The fact that it turned into this massive beast. We created a monster, a good monster, with the Band Aid and Live Aid thing. But it felt at times when you're sitting in those meetings, we had meetings every day, 4 or 5 hours long, talking about sorghum and high protein biscuits and trucking and shipping and medication and all of that stuff, every single day.
And is it a given that the more you talk about that, the further the music goes away?
The music was irrelevant at that point. We were involved. All of a sudden, we were charity workers. We were there. We'd wanted to cut out the middleman. Band-Aid never paid anybody. We never paid anything. We had no staff. We were given some premises for a while. It still exists today. The Band-Aid Trust. We don't have anywhere. We don't meet in a room. We don't have anything. We don't pay anybody. There's no PAs. There's no secretaries. There's nobody answering the phones. It's just us, because we promised that every penny we would earn would get to Africa. That's what we said, and that's what we've been doing. So we found ourselves sitting doing this on a daily basis, and feeling, I have to say, swamped a lot of the time, making decisions about stuff that we actually didn't know anything about. The only way you can deal with that is by surrounding yourself with experts, with people who do know what they're talking about. How can I tell you, what's meant to be happening in Ethiopia when the rains fail? What do you do? How do you cope with that? What's the infrastructure? Who needs to be paid and who doesn't need to be paid? What do you buy? Who do you help? Do you start with education? Do you start with sex education? Do you start with what? Blah, I'm a musician. I'm a guy who plays guitar from Glasgow. What do I know? So you surround yourself with people who actually do know. So it's, trying not to make, the red tape that a lot of agencies have got around them and have to go through. We ended up still having to go through our little bit of red tape in order to try and achieve what we'd set out to do.
And meantime,
the
guys in Ultravox are going,
disappeared.
Midge.
Absolutely.
Midge, the voice is getting fainter and fainter and fainter.
Absolutely. It was fine for Bob because the rats were well and truly gone at that point, before Band-Aid happened.
No, they'd been almost buried. I mean, Live Aid was like the wake for the rats, really.
I think, they revived themselves for that, but I think they were gone. Bob reminded me that he was sitting at home looking after the kids, twiddling his thumbs, when he saw that original bit of footage on the Beeb. So, he was the house husband at that point. So, but I had a band. I was still.
And how articulate were the rest of Ultravox to you at the time? I mean, did they sit down? Because in any relationship, what's the big thing? Communication. And when communication breaks down, everything else goes out the window. And it's only with hindsight that we go, imagine if I just said, look, I'm sorry, or please, I'm annoyed,
sure.
Or, I mean, did they speak to you?
They spoke to me, yeah, but they never pressured me. They never said, look, you've got to get back, you've got to get on with this, It was, they got into the studio, they did some tracks, they got some ideas together, waiting for me to come in and do it again as a unit, not waiting for me as the kind of saviour, waiting for me to get in there and do my bit, to add my contributions and stuff. And of course, when we did get back in, as I said, we were completely different people. We were all pulling in different directions. So in a way, and it's interesting that you point that out, because I've never thought about it. They were incredibly gracious to leave me to go and do what I needed to do at the time.
Because I presume what they were doing, no matter how grandiose or wonderful or great or potentially successful, it was tiny, tiny biscuits compared to what you were at. I presume that's the way it felt.
But even then, to them, it was their career. It was
I'm not saying.
It was their livelihood, So I was putting their lives on hold while I was doing this other stuff. But until you've just mentioned it, I've never actually thought about that. Is that selfish or what?
2FM.
I was told off by a well-known journalist in the UK that it should have been if I were. And I said, well, shouldn't it be if one were?
What complete bullshit. Beat Bopalula.
There you go. I know.
Come on, get a grip. Get a grip. Now, in the Ultravox story, we have come full circle. And you're back together again. Everybody's back together again.
Seems to be the time to do it.
This is the time for concerts. I mean, the one thing, Ireland is collapsing. What is the one business that is selling out every night? The brand new studio quality O2 Arena. They're stuffing it every night. Now, I'm not saying they could stuff it with, Mega Flem or whoever, but at the moment,
I think they probably could, yeah, but carry on.
Stuffing it. Live concerts are where it's at. And there's a whole generation very happy to stomp up the dough to come and see the music that they grew up with. And I think, thank God for it.
Well, I think we went through a huge phase of going to see, various artists where you couldn't see a musician in sight. Our kids, my kids certainly grew up, seeing concerts where it was a lot of dancing and, a lot of dancers and a lot of flashing lights and huge, spectacular things to watch. A bit like watching Disney on Ice or something, Not a musician to be seen because it's all on CD or it's all on hard disk.
Well, I went to see the Chemical Brothers. Now, I know, sorry if I'm offending anybody, I'm sure I am. And the same man that owns the O2. And we stood there. Now, literally, our hair was going back, what we have left of hair. The trousers were shaking. Yeah. And I said, Jesus, this is the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. And he said, come on backstage. We went backstage. The two boyos with sunglasses with torches on them.
Yeah.
Right? And we looked... There was nobody playing anything. It was all on that tape. Yeah. The whole thing.
Kids don't care. They didn't care. So I think
they're beginning to get much more discerning, though.
I think they want to see something.
They want to see rock and roll as well.
They want to hear what it's all about. There's a synergy. There's an energy that when you get a bunch of musicians together, that something happens, something sparks. When it sparks and it's on form, it's phenomenal, and you can't discern what it is. You can't say, it was a blinding guitar solo. No, it's not the guitar solo. It's the fact that the drummer and the bass player are working together or whatever, and it creates an ambient, it creates an effect. There's something that's just there that makes the hair in the back of your neck stand up. It makes you think, this is awesome. Maybe it's not awesome. Maybe it's just, I don't know, it's okay, but something comes together, and it's the sum of all the parts: the lights, the sound, the excitement, the vibrancy, the crowd. All gels at some point, and bam, you've got something special. But then you go and see something where it's all on tape and there's a bunch of dancers and there's huge video screens and whatever, and it does nothing for you. I think people are now starting to appreciate the fact that whether it's a huge stadium, whether it's a massive concert and it's live, or whether it's one guy, I go out and do acoustic shows, whether it's one guy sitting with his guitar singing, no tapes, no nothing. This is it. This is what you get, warts and all. And there's something real about that.
I went to see the Kings of Leon recently, right? And somebody said to me, what did you think? And I said, it was a bloody good night out. And it reminded me of when I was 17. I said, these are angry and loud young fellas. And it was blistering. And it was really good, and there was an incredible mix of people in the audience. Very young people, a couple of guys who looked like they'd turned into the wrong place, and others who were obviously very dedicated fans because they looked exactly like the band. And I thought, this is what it's meant to be. This is actually what it's meant to be. So it's alive and well and living in bands like that.
Of course it is, and it was good to see the Brits the other night and see Kings of Leon up there, and everyone raving, going, fantastic, what a great band. I think, no, they're probably not a great band, they're probably a very good band, but they're live and they're putting their guitars on and they're tuning up and they're giving it some stick. That's all it's all about. We've just gone full circle. We've gone a long way round to get back to that again.
When you're putting together the show for Ultravox, what did you decide to do? Because you can either try and, this is something I wrote last week and it's about my friend Frank. You can either go down that route and everybody goes, oh shit, how long is it? 13 and a half minutes.
Yeah.
Or you can give them a greatest hit story.
It's going to verge more towards the greatest hits.
Well, that's probably the best thing to be doing.
We're not out there trying to educate, we're out there to entertain. It's 30 years since we wrote Vienna, that's why we're doing it. It's 30 years this year since we wrote Vienna. That's horrible. And that was when that was pointed out to us, we started talking and thought, well, if we were ever going to do anything musically together, ever, this is the year to do it. So it's this year.
Holy mother of God, 30 years.
Yeah. It's frightening, isn't it?
Jeepers. I can remember seeing it, and videos were just born at the time, and it was kind of an Anton Corbijn sort of look about it, the video had, and there was a lot of talk about, they're trying to do something very different here, and in fact it was very different.
I think the difference was with Ultravox, we cared, not just about the music, we cared about the packaging, the artwork, we cared about the stage sets, we cared about the videos. We were the first people to say, well, we don't want video, we don't want electronic nonsense, we want to shoot it on 16mm. We want to crop the top and bottom of the screen to make it look like CinemaScope. They're all video cliches now, but back then it was cutting edge stuff, black and white into colour, that grainy essence that you get from a movie. So we made mini movies. That was it, but it's because we did it ourselves. We got involved. We were embroiled, as opposed to handing it across to a record company who then farm it out to half a dozen production companies, and they all have these little scripts that say, "I see Midge standing in a loft with shafts of light coming through." But you quite easily think, well, hold on, this morning that was probably "I see Kylie standing in a loft with shafts." It's just nonsense. It bears no relevance to the music at all. So we took control of all that stuff, and I'm very proud of it as well. Yeah.
Here's an interesting text. Please get Midge to talk about when he was in Lizzie.
Great band. I used to go and see. I was a big fan.
Was John Sykes with you, or whose part were you
playing? No, the proper Lizzie.
Whoa!
Sykes. Good God, no.
So there's you, Scott Gorham,
Phil and Brian.
Yep. Okay.
So, but even prior to all that stuff, I used to go and see Lizzie back in the early days.
So you took over the other Scottish fella's role?
No, I took over Gary's role.
Gary Moore, who took over the other Scottish fella's role.
That's right, yeah. Because Gary and Phil always had this love-hate relationship going. So what happened was I'd been a fan of the band from the very early years, the three-piece. And I was working in the studio doing the Visage project. I just joined Ultravox, and Phil called me from Arkansas saying we're in the middle of an American tour opening up for Journey. Gary's not in the band anymore. We've done the last couple of gigs as a three-piece. Can you come over and finish the tour? Now, why you asked me, I'll never know. I'm not a
Nightlife had just been released, wasn't it?
Alive and Dangerous was huge. Oh, yeah. Black Rose was the album they were out.
Oh, so it was further on.
Yeah. It was Black Rose, and I just, fantastic. So I thought I'll learn the songs. He said, "Can you get here tomorrow?" And they sent me a bunch of cassettes and a set list and said, "Learn the songs." So I thought, well, I'll learn it on the plane. They sent me out in Concorde, so I was halfway through the first song with my headphones on, and we landed. So that night I sat up and I learned all the songs. The next night I'm out there in front of 20, 30,000 people or whatever it was, playing The Boys Are Back in Town, and it was great. It was fantastic. And I did an Irish tour and did a Japanese tour, and then went off and did my Ultravox thing. But Philip was fabulous. I wouldn't trust him with my girlfriend any further than I could throw him, but he was like my big brother. He was great. And when he was off doing these big interviews in New York and wherever, he would drag me in, and halfway through the interview he'd say, "Right, Midge, tell him about Ultravox," and give me the slots. I was saying, well, I've just joined this band, and they'd go, "Oh, great, fantastic." So he was kind of nurturing me along, which is fantastic. He was a great guy.
And then there is some footage available of the Live and Dangerous material. Now it kind of pales into sort of significance compared to the way they shoot stuff nowadays. But wow, they were really cooking around that time.
They were a killer band. Yeah. When they were on form, they were just phenomenal. It was just fantastic. And for an aspiring guitar player as I was, watching Thin Lizzy as a three-piece with Eric Bell and all of that stuff, it was great. Being up there and playing all those great guitar riffs.
Well, the good news for those of you listening, this is not just two middle-aged men going down memory lane. This is actually a clarion call to arms to come to the Olympia, where Ultravox will play in Dublin on Saturday the 2nd of May. A nice way to start the summer. And the Waterfront Hall in Belfast on Sunday the 3rd of May. Tickets are now on sale and available from www.ticketmaster.ie. When do you kick off?
Kick off on my wife's birthday, so I'm persona non grata. It's the 10th of April, and we're kicking off in Edinburgh. So we start in Edinburgh, finish in Ireland.
Are you looking forward to it?
I am, actually, yeah. When I get my head around the modern technology, last time we performed live with 26 synthesizers on stage. Now it's a bunch of laptops, and it's still all live, no backing tracks, all of the things. But it's a much more flexible unit. So I am looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it, Midge Ure. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Good
morning.